A phone vibrated hard against the metal table, rattling a cold cup of Starbucks that somebody had left behind like it didn't matter, like nothing mattered in this place. The sound was tiny, but it made every head turn anyway, because in here even tiny sounds could turn into big problems. Marcus kept his eyes down, hands flat, like he'd been taught to do in 100 different rooms with 100 different kinds of authority. A tear slid off his cheek before he could stop it and landed on his knuckle. He hated that. Not the tear itself, but the fact that it happened in front of strangers who were bored and hungry for a reaction. Across from him, a broad-shouldered guy leaned back, smiling like he had all the time in the world. "New guy," he said, loud enough for the table to hear. "You cry easy like that in the free world too, or is that a new hobby you picked up on the ride over?" Marcus didn't answer. He just listened to the vibration fade, like the outside world had tried to reach him and then gave up. The first thing Marcus noticed about the facility wasn't the noise. It was the smell. Not one smell, but a mix of things that didn't belong together. Industrial cleaner, sweat that never fully left the air, microwaved food, and something metallic that reminded him of a garage. He'd been in plenty of gyms, plenty of locker rooms, plenty of arenas that smelled like effort and nerves. This was different. This smelled like time that didn't care what you did with it. He was processed like a package. His shoes became somebody else's problem. His belt disappeared. His name got repeated by people who didn't look at his face. When he finally stood in a holding area with a few other men, he tried to focus on small details, because small details were something he could control. A scuff mark on the floor shaped like a comma. A poster about hygiene with peeling corners. The way one of the guards tapped a pen against his clipboard like a metronome. Marcus had done everything he could to keep his life from coming here. He'd done the early mornings, the boring meals, the endless travel. He'd done the interviews where people wanted him to be a character, not a person. He'd built a career out of discipline and restraint and knowing exactly where his body was in space. It still hadn't protected him from one bad decision that didn't even feel dramatic at the time. It wasn't some wild, movie-style mistake. It was paperwork. It was signing his name on a contract with a manager he shouldn't have trusted. It was a tax mess that grew teeth. It was an argument that got recorded, a shove in a parking lot that became a case, a plea deal that his lawyer said was the safest option. Safe. That word tasted bitter now. He wasn't famous anymore, not in the way people meant when they said the word. The peak had passed. The last big fight had been years ago. He'd been legendary, then washed, then inspiring, then mostly forgotten by the wider world. But the internet didn't forget completely. Clips still floated around. Old highlight reels with dramatic music. Comments arguing about whether he was the best ever or just the best at the time. Marcus didn't want any of that in here. He'd told himself that over and over. He'd keep his head down. He'd do his time. He'd come out and try to build something small and honest. He didn't need to be a name again. Still, when he walked into the unit for the first time, he felt eyes on him like heat. Not because they recognized him, but because new faces were currency. A new person meant a new story. A new person meant somebody to test. A guard pointed him toward a narrow cell with 2 bunks. His cellmate was older, tired-looking, with a soft belly and a calm voice that didn't match the environment. "I'm Leon," he said, like they were meeting at a bus stop. "Top bunk's mine. You can take the bottom." Marcus nodded. Marcus. Leon studied him for a second, not rude, just curious. "You good?" Marcus wanted to say, "No, I'm not good. I'm 35 and I might never get my life back. I can still hear my mother's voice in my ear telling me to be careful who I trust. I can still see my little brother's face when he asked me if I was coming home for his graduation. I can still feel the weight of the championship belt they took photos of, like it was proof I mattered. None of that belongs here." Instead, Marcus said, "Yeah, I'm fine." Leon didn't push. He just shrugged like he understood the translation. "All right. If you need anything, don't ask the loud guys. Ask me." Marcus unpacked the small things he'd been given, the basics. He folded what passed for clothes into a neat stack because his hands needed something to do. When he sat down on the thin mattress, it squeaked, and he felt a flash of anger at how cheap everything was. Like even comfort had been budgeted out. That night, sleep came in pieces. He kept hearing small sounds that made his body tense automatically. A shout down the hall. A laugh that sounded too sharp. The buzz of fluorescent lights. His brain tried to turn it into a pattern, something he could train against. But this wasn't a fight camp. There were no rounds. No clock. No coach telling him when it was safe to breathe. In the morning, he stood in line for breakfast and watched men move like they'd been doing this for years. He watched how they gave each other space, or didn't. How some people kept their eyes forward, and some people looked around like they owned the place. Marcus tried to pick the safest version of himself. Neutral face. Shoulders relaxed but not slumped. Quiet. He didn't miss the irony that his whole public life had been loud. Bright lights. Cameras inches from his face. Crowds chanting his name. But that version of him felt like someone he'd watched on TV, not someone he could reach. In the common area later, a guy near the weight pile kept glancing at him. Big, confident, with a swagger that said he wanted attention the way some people wanted air. Marcus heard his name in pieces from nearby conversations. New dude. Looks like. Man, you think that's him? Marcus tried to pretend he didn't hear. He'd learned long ago that attention was a kind of fuel. Some people ran on it. Some people set fires with it. The big guy finally walked over, slow, like he wanted everyone to watch. He leaned down, close enough that Marcus could smell instant coffee on his breath. You got soft hands for a guy in here, he said, smiling. You hiding something, Marcus? Marcus looked up. He didn't stare. He didn't flinch. He just met the guy's eyes for a beat, then looked away like the moment didn't deserve more. I'm just trying to get through my day, Marcus said. The big guy laughed like that was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. You and everybody else. He glanced around, performing. But some days in here come with attacks. Marcus felt Leon's presence behind him, quiet but close. Leon didn't say anything, and Marcus appreciated that. Marcus didn't need a savior. He needed time. He needed a way to stay himself in a place designed to make you something else. The big guy tapped Marcus's shoulder with 2 fingers, not hard, but on purpose. Don't be weird about it, he said. I'm just saying hi. Marcus stood up slowly, careful. His body knew 100 ways to respond. He could have moved in a blink. He could have made the moment dramatic. But he didn't. He kept his hands open at his sides, like he was holding an invisible promise. I heard you, Marcus said, voice low. I'm not here to cause problems. The big guy's smile thinned. We'll see. When he walked away, Marcus sat back down and stared at the floor, letting his breathing settle. His phone wasn't here. His team wasn't here. His old life wasn't here. But his choices were still his, even now. He thought about his mother's last voicemail, the one he hadn't deleted because he couldn't. The one where she didn't yell. She just sounded tired. Baby, she'd said, whatever happens, don't lose yourself trying to survive it. Marcus pressed the heel of his hand into his eye like he could push the feeling back inside. He didn't want to be the guy who cried at a metal table. He also didn't want to be the guy who turned pain into permission. He wanted to get through this with his mind intact. He wanted, somehow, to come out still capable of being gentle. The days settled into a rhythm Marcus didn't like, but learned anyway. Count. Eat. Wait. Move. Wait again. The routine had a way of flattening time, turning whole mornings into something that felt like one long afternoon. Marcus kept his head down, but he didn't disappear. People noticed consistency in here. They noticed who didn't complain, who didn't borrow, who didn't posture. Leon became the closest thing Marcus had to an anchor. They didn't talk much at first. Just small exchanges that filled the quiet without demanding anything. Leon would offer half his apple. Marcus would slide his extra packet of oatmeal across the table. No words needed. It felt almost normal, which made it dangerous. Normal made you forget where you were. One afternoon, while they were sitting near the phones, Leon broke the pattern. "You used to do something physical," he said, "not a question. I can tell by how you stand." Marcus smiled without humor. "Used to." Leon nodded like that answered everything. "I was a warehouse guy. Forklifts. Long hours. Blew my knee out. Turns out your job doesn't love you back." Marcus felt that land deeper than he expected. "Yeah," he said quietly. "That sounds familiar." The phones rang in uneven bursts. Men leaned against the wall, voices low, faces tight or animated depending on who was on the other end. Marcus watched a guy punch the cinder blocks softly after hanging up, like he was mad at the wall for existing. Another guy laughed too loud, like he needed whoever was listening to believe he was okay. Marcus hadn't used the phone yet. He told himself he was waiting for the right moment. The truth was he didn't know what version of himself would come out on the other end. The strong one. The ashamed one. The tired one. He didn't want to put that weight on anyone. Later that day, during rec time, a younger guy named Chris sat near Marcus on the bench. Chris had nervous energy, always bouncing his knee, always scanning the space. "You ever miss quiet?" Chris asked suddenly. Marcus blinked. "Yeah. More than anything." Chris nodded hard. "I miss my car. Not even driving it. Just sitting in it. Windows up. Radio low. Nobody needing anything from me." Marcus pictured it instantly. A car parked outside a grocery store. Sun fading. The smell of old fast food and air freshener. A place where you could exist without being watched. "That makes sense," he said. Chris hesitated, then added, "People in here think if you don't act tough, you're weak." Marcus looked at him. Being quiet isn't the same as being weak. Chris smiled like he hadn't heard that before. "Yeah. I'm trying to remember that." That night, Marcus finally picked up the phone. The receiver felt heavier than it should have. He dialed his mother's number even though he knew it would go to voicemail. It always did now. When her recorded voice came on, warm and familiar, his chest tightened. "Hey Ma," he said softly. "It's me. I don't know if I'll ever hear this again, but I'm trying. I'm really trying." He hung up before his voice could break. Leon didn't look at him, which Marcus appreciated. The big guy from before, the one with the swagger, didn't bother Marcus again directly. But Marcus felt him around. Watching. Testing the air. It wasn't a threat so much as a presence, like weather you couldn't ignore. Marcus understood men like that. They were loud because silence scared them. One evening, as Marcus wiped down a table after dinner, the big guy's voice drifted over. "You move like you're counting steps." Marcus paused, then kept wiping. "Habit." The guy laughed, but there was less edge to it this time. "Must have been something before all this." Marcus didn't respond. He didn't owe his past to anyone. Later, lying on his bunk, Marcus stared at the underside of Leon's mattress. He thought about how strange it was that connection here came in pieces. A sentence. A shared look. A half apple. No speeches. No big moments. Just small reminders that he wasn't completely alone. He still didn't know how to forgive himself for the choices that got him here. That felt too big. But for the first time since he'd arrived, he felt a crack in the wall he'd built around himself. A crack where something human could get through. Change didn't feel like a miracle. It felt like a risk. And Marcus wasn't sure yet if he was brave enough to take it. The breaking point didn't come with shouting or alarms. It came on a Tuesday that felt exactly like every other day, which somehow made it worse. Marcus was in the laundry room, folding clothes that weren't really his, the fabric rough and warm from the dryers. The machines hummed like tired animals. He liked this room because nobody talked much. People focused on socks, on stains that never fully came out, on the simple math of keeping track of what belonged to them. It was one of the few places where attention softened. That's when he heard his name spoken differently. Not loud. Not challenging. Curious. "You know they talk about you," someone said from behind him. Marcus didn't turn right away. He finished folding a shirt, stacked it neatly, then looked over. It was Chris, hands shoved into his pockets, eyes darting like he already regretted saying anything. "About what?" Marcus asked. Chris shrugged. "About what you used to be. Or what you might be. Depends who's talking." Marcus felt his chest tighten. He'd known this was coming. Secrets didn't last here. They never did. "And what do you think?" he asked. Chris hesitated. "I think it doesn't matter. But it matters to other people." That sat heavy between them. Chris drifted off, leaving Marcus alone with the hum of the dryers and the sudden awareness of his own breathing. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. Leon's breathing above him was steady, almost comforting, but Marcus's mind wouldn't slow down. Old memories pushed forward uninvited. The roar of crowds. The walkout music vibrating through his bones. The way people used to look at him like he represented something bigger than himself. He remembered the pressure more clearly than the glory. The way losing felt like failing an entire story people had written for him. The way winning never lasted long enough to feel safe. He'd told himself that being here stripped all that away. That in this place, he was just Marcus. No expectations. No legend. But that wasn't true, was it? People always built stories. Even here. The next day, the big guy cornered him near the water fountain. Not aggressively. Not yet. Just close enough to make a point. "You really that guy?" he asked quietly. No audience this time. The one from those old clips. Marcus stared at the chipped paint on the wall behind him. He felt tired in a way that sleep didn't fix. "I used to fight," he said. "That's all." The big guy smirked. "Used to be a lot of things, then." Marcus finally looked at him. "So were you." Something flickered in the man's eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or recognition. The big guy scoffed and stepped back. "We'll see," he said again, but this time it sounded less certain. Marcus walked away, his heart pounding harder than he liked. He hated that this part of him still mattered. Hated that the thing he'd tried to bury was being dug up by strangers. Later, during rec, Marcus sat alone, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. His body felt coiled, not with anger, but with fear. Not fear of getting hurt. Fear of losing control. Fear of becoming the version of himself that solved problems with force because it was easy and familiar. Leon sat beside him without a word. After a while, Leon said, "You look like a man arguing with himself." Marcus let out a dry laugh. "I am." Leon nodded. "Those are the loudest fights." Marcus swallowed. "I spent my whole life being told what I was good for. What I was supposed to be. And the one time I messed up, everything collapsed. I don't know who I am without all that." Leon leaned back, eyes on the ceiling. "You think the job made you who you were," he said. "But maybe it just showed parts that were already there." Marcus shook his head. What if the worst parts were already there too? Leon was quiet for a long moment. "Then you're doing the work now," he said. "Most people never do." That night, Marcus finally let himself cry. Not in public. Not where anyone could see. Just lying on his bunk, staring into the dark, letting the weight hit him fully for the first time. He cried for his mother. For the man he'd been when he thought nothing could touch him. For the man he was now, unsure and stripped down and scared. The next morning, there was tension in the air. Marcus felt it before anyone said anything. People watched him differently. Quieter. Measuring. The big guy sat across the room, arms crossed, eyes locked on Marcus like he was waiting for something. Marcus stood up and walked toward the phones. Each step felt deliberate. Grounding. He picked up the receiver and dialed his brother's number this time. It rang longer than he expected. "Hello," his brother said, voice cautious. "It's me," Marcus said. There was a pause, then a breath. "I didn't know if you'd call." "I didn't either," Marcus admitted. "I just wanted you to know. I'm not who you think I am anymore. But I'm trying to be someone better." His brother didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was thick. "That's all I ever wanted, man." Marcus hung up and stood there, phone still warm in his hand. Around him, life in the unit went on. Cards slapped tables. Someone laughed. Someone cursed. Nothing dramatic happened. But something inside Marcus shifted. He realized the breaking point wasn't about whether he could survive this place. It was about whether he could let go of the idea that strength only meant dominance. Whether he could choose restraint even when people expected spectacle. The hardest fight he'd ever faced wasn't in a cage or an arena. It was the quiet, daily decision to stay human. The days didn't suddenly get easier after that. They just got clearer. Marcus stopped measuring time by how long until lights out and started measuring it by smaller things. How many pages he read without his mind drifting. How many push-ups he did slowly, focusing on breath instead of numbers. How often he chose to walk away from noise. None of it made him special. It just made the hours manageable. The big guy never made a move. Not because he was afraid, but because Marcus didn't give him the story he wanted. No reaction. No performance. Just space. In a place where attention was currency, Marcus refused to spend it. One afternoon, Chris sat beside him again, quieter than usual. "They thought you were gonna be different," he said. Marcus nodded. "So did I." Chris smiled, small and relieved. "Guess that's a good thing." Leon watched it all from a distance, like someone who trusted the process without needing to comment. One evening, as they lay in their bunks, Leon said, "You know, some people come in here trying to prove something. Others come in trying to protect something." Marcus stared at the ceiling. "Which one am I?" Leon chuckled softly. "You're figuring it out." Marcus finally got a response to one of his voicemails. Not a call. A letter. His brother's handwriting was uneven, like he'd rushed it. He wrote about normal things. About work. About their cousin getting married. About how their mother would have loved the way Marcus handled himself now, even if she hated how he got there. He didn't offer forgiveness like a grand gesture. He just wrote, "I'm proud of you for facing it." Marcus folded the letter carefully and kept it under his mattress. It didn't fix anything. But it steadied him. Weeks passed. Then months. Marcus volunteered for small jobs. Cleaning. Helping organize supplies. Things nobody applauded. He listened more than he spoke. When someone tried to pull him into gossip or tension, he declined without drama. People stopped testing him because there was nothing to push against. One morning, during rec, a new guy sat where Marcus used to sit on his first day. Nervous. Eyes down. Hands clenched. Marcus hesitated, then sat nearby. Not too close. Just close enough to be seen. "You good?" Marcus asked. The guy shrugged. "Trying to be." Marcus nodded. "That's enough for today." The guy looked up, surprised, then nodded back. It wasn't mentorship. It wasn't heroism. It was just presence. Marcus realized that was the version of strength he could live with. When his release date finally came into view, it didn't feel like a movie ending. There were no speeches. No swelling music. Just paperwork, a bag of his things, and the same doors opening in reverse order. Outside, the air felt too big. Too open. Marcus stood still for a moment, letting it hit him. Cars passed. Someone laughed on a phone. Life didn't pause to acknowledge what he'd been through. His brother picked him up. They didn't hug right away. They just stood there, unsure. Then his brother pulled him in, firm and quiet, like it was a decision he'd made and wasn't going to second guess. They drove in silence for a while. At a red light, Marcus noticed a coffee cup in the holder, half full, cooling. He smiled faintly at the familiarity of it. "You okay?" his brother asked. Marcus nodded. "Yeah. Not fixed. Just better." That night, in a small guest room that wasn't his but felt safe enough, Marcus lay awake listening to the ordinary sounds of a house. Pipes. A distant TV. Someone moving in the kitchen. He thought about how close he'd come to losing himself trying to survive. He understood now that being the deadliest version of himself had never been the point. That label belonged to a past shaped by fear and pressure and expectations he didn't choose. The strength that mattered was quieter, harder, more honest. The small win wasn't redemption or fame or even peace. It was waking up the next morning and choosing restraint. Choosing empathy. Choosing to believe that self-worth didn't depend on who was watching. Marcus brewed coffee and sat by the window as the sun came up over a street that looked like 1,000 others across the country. He wasn't a legend anymore. He wasn't invisible either. He was just a man who learned, the hard way, that real power isn't about proving you can hurt someone. It's about proving you don't have to.